Fisheries. He's going to be talking about our river herring. And then we have Mr. Scott Bancroft from Habib and Associates Architects, and he's going to discuss the marine resiliency plan, right? Yep. And what's going to happen to this building. And luckily, nice high tide, and we have no water at our feet, so that's a good thing right now today. And then Jimmy Powell, Jimmy's here. He's going to produce those great, the drone videos, if you've seen them. They're wonderful online, or there's one back here. Also been doing all the photo documenting for us and of activities. He's going to talk about the herring count program, right? Okay.
Well, it's kind of an informal discussion that I had planned. But
all right. Well, I got everything right so far, but we got time. And then finally, at the end of the meeting, we will have an election of officers and directors. Most of the candidates have been known by you, but I'd like to introduce the newest candidate, Nathan. He's volunteered to join us as a candidate, and we'll talk to him a little bit later with the other candidates. Before I relinquish the floor, there is one other point I'd like to make, and that's a heartfelt thank you to you. You're the people that make it possible here. With your efforts and support, that's the only way we survive. So the idea is that we need your assistance. We're still looking for other projects, and we've got plenty of them on the list, Pine, right? Yes. But we need your assistance. If you're going to join the fish count with Jimmy,
please.
It'd be fantastic. Or any other way. If you know of anybody that would be interested in the association and joining, hand them one of our little cards so that they can get online and join us. Or if you find someone that would like to contribute, we're always looking for funds and things like that. It's easy. You go online. I know myself, it's great. You set up, comes right out of the bank account monthly, and it's just a small amount. You don't even miss it, or I don't, sometimes. But it'd be great. Again, thank you for coming and being a faithful supporter of our program. That's all I'd like to say. Pine is going to...
Thank you. And thank you all for coming, really. We need a few more members. You got a little text. Text your member friends, your family friends, and get them down here for the voting, okay? It's my pleasure, distinctly, to introduce our speaker today. I've been working with this guy. I think he taught me how to count fish in 2005, I want to say. But I think we knew each other a little before that. Yeah. Anyway, without the information and knowledge and just consistency of effort that this guy brings to the effort of keeping the fish swimming, keeping them here. It's been a losing battle, I gotta say, and that's why the fish counting is so important. I mean, getting everybody out there with your eyes out there to see what we're not seeing as well as what we do see. It's important to let people know, because there are things that can be changed that would improve the situation. We're doing our share in the Jones, I think, in terms of taking out the dams and trying to, improve the water quality and such. But it really takes an agency. It takes dedication of the staff of that agency. Brad is a senior biologist of marine fisheries. I had the distinct pleasure not too long ago of meeting one of his professors from 1980s, who's coming back here to help us with our last challenge to get the fish into Silver Lake. So without further ado, Brad, tell everybody what he told me.
Thank you, Pine, and thank you, Jason, and thank you all for coming out. It's really nice to see folks here. I haven't given a presentation like this since before the pandemic, so really getting tired of the Zoom presentations. So this is really nice to see everybody here. So I'm going to talk about the Searan fish, the Jones River, from my perspective as a fish biologist who works for the State Division of Marine Fisheries.
Uh-oh.
Here we go. And so when we say Searan fish, we're talking about diatomos fish. And these are the fish that switch habitats to fulfill their life history. They only represent about 1% of the fish on the planet, so they're not all that common. In Massachusetts, we have about 15 species of diatomos fish. And the 10 listed here are the ones you probably think of the most. These are ones that provide forage for all kinds of fish and wildlife. They used to provide large commercial fisheries, and they still provide small recreational fisheries. They're all anadromous, which means they're born in freshwater and head out to the ocean to spawn and mature, except for the American eel, which is catadromous, meaning it's born out in the ocean and it does the reverse migration. Okay, I'll figure this out. The four that we deal with the most are shown here. Upper left is the river herring, both alewife and blueback. Upper right is our own John Shepard holding American shad from the North River in Marshfield. Lower left is the very tasty rainbow smelt. They're probably one of the best fried fish we have in coastal Massachusetts. And then here is the ubiquitous American eel. They're found everywhere. They're actually also very tasty too, though I think as a culture we're kind of forgetting that they're a food fish. And they come in all shapes and sizes. And we've got the large striped bass in the upper left there. Searan brook trout here. The very ancient lamprey. I've learned to appreciate these. They don't have a jaw or a mouth. They have an oral disc that attaches to other fish and sucks their blood. So I've always viewed them as kind of repulsive, but I've learned to appreciate they belong here. They're a native fish. They engineered river channels as they build their nest in a way that's favorable for the ecology of the streams. And they're a fish that I think can benefit from having these dams come out in the Jones River. So we might see more of these very bizarre fish in the future. Also very ancient is the sturgeon. All these fish have the same reproductive life history strategy, but they are very different families. So different evolutionary pathways came to the same style for spawning in these freshwater habitats, where the theory is the young can have better survival than if they didn't come up into the freshwater habitats. Okay, so here's the Jones River, and we could spend a lot of time on this slide here. This is, let's see, well, it doesn't show it here. This is a view. We have something called the Diatomos Fish Restoration Priority List. It's a GIS data layer that shows all types of information. Where it shows green means fish can pass. Where it shows red, it means they cannot pass. And where there's a circle, there's a project there. If it's green, it means fish can pass. If it's yellow, something could be done. If it's red, the fish cannot go. And it has information within this data layer on what can be done there. There's also information on river herring sampling stations, smelt stations, eel traps, eel ramps. So there's a lot of information here. This is how the watershed looked in 2011. And you can see they couldn't get past Wapping Road, the dam. They couldn't get to Silver Lake. So really, a lot has changed in a pretty short period of time. So we go to the present day, and it cuts off down here, but the Wapping Road Dam came out in 2011, the Elm Street Dam came out in 2019, and then a Fishway was put in up here at Forge Pond Dam in 2019. All of a sudden, we've got green into Silver Lake for the first time in over 100 years. Really pretty exciting, and really a credit to this association, above all, but also many local, state, and federal partners. So I think it's really a success story in coastal Massachusetts. Still a lot to be done. We can see some red over here in Stony Brook, down here at Smelt Brook, and there's plenty of other projects that can be done as well. Sylvia Place Pond, we need a fish ladder up here, but it's pretty exciting. Here's smelt spawning habitat shown here. We've also got it up here at Island Creek and Duxbury. Smelt also spawned down here in Smelt Brook. So a lot of information is available here. And so again, I can't talk enough about the Elm Street Dam removal. It really was a spectacular project. I think one of the most significant coastal river dam removals in Massachusetts. And what it does to me is it opens up this habitat where the impoundment was dewatered, and upstream of that, you've got all this exposed river channel now, where you have this pool riffle complex. It's going to really be important for a number of species. River herring, lamprey, white perch, hopefully shad. So it's really a multi-species benefit. And we can't say right now which species populations are really going to increase, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see some improvements with this dam out. And some of this habitat is just beautiful upstream of there. Okay, on to Forge Pond Dam up at Silver Lake and Forge Pond. So when the Wapping Road Dam came out in 2011, we thought we'd see fish the next year right up at Forge Pond. And they didn't really show. And we started asking why, and we started looking downstream and found lots of places that had tree falls, debris jams, and places where people really hadn't been to for a long time because fish couldn't get above Wapping Road. And we started to work on these with the association. And then in 2018, fish showed up at Forge Pond Dam. I'm not sure if they were seen before then, Pine. I never saw them before then, but I think May 2018 they showed up. And we had been talking to the city of Brockton about a fishway there, and this really kicked in the conversation. Let's find a way to get a fishway. We developed an agreement with the city of Brockton, and in 2019, this fish ladder went in. This was a fabrication by my shop in New Bedford. The whole project cost less than $1,000, but we always recognized that it was a temporary ladder, and we need to move on to the next step. And that's where we are today. We have a contract out right now with Gomez and Sullivan to design a new fishway, which will just extend where the present one is, using this channel here. And we're hoping to use this new design called the BK design, which has only been deployed once in North America, in Illinois. And it's thought to be a low-flow design that moves all kinds of species back and forth and doesn't need a lot of water. So it could be really exciting to have this new fishway right here. We also have to dredge the pond, so this will include dredging. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service produced a scoping design for a fishway. Now the engineering firm will finalize that design and deliver permits. So we've got funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Jones River Watershed Association, and my agency. And I'm really excited. We had the kickoff meeting on March 10th, and the project is underway. So it took a few years to get to this point in time.
Yeah.
There's also graduate students studying silver eels that are leaving Forge Pond. And she's catching quite a few silver eels in the fall as they leave the pond when the flow picks up. Also, in her net, they caught a lot of juvenile river herring. So these river herring that are using our fish ladder are going up there, but they can't leave when they want to leave. And so they're really growing to large size. You never see juveniles this big, 15 centimeters in coastal Massachusetts, but they can't leave, so they stay in Silver Lake, they get large. We've even caught a few adults that can't leave. And they came out in good numbers in November. So we're hoping with a new fish ladder we'll be able to allow these fish to leave when they want to. But it's a good sign that all the restoration efforts are starting to pay off as fish are getting into Silver Lake. So I'd be happy to take questions on this later. It's kind of a big deal, and it's going on right now. Lots of other things are happening in the watershed, but I'm not going to take up too much time. Sylvia Place has a dam breach. It's going to permitting right now. Lake Street Culvert, there's some interest in replacing that, and that would be a fantastic project up at Lake Street. And then I think Pine has her eyes set on Stony Brook as well, and would love to see fish get up into Blackwater Pond.
I have a good report on that now.
Okay, so yeah, this could be a whole presentation in this one
I
slide
love the
here.
picture you picked. That's the log that was blocking the fish ladder.
Yeah, so stream maintenance is sometimes, taking out tree falls. Sometimes it's finding logs like this that fully block a fish ladder.
Perfect size.
And
Just
so I
built
found
for
that
it.
and said, okay, there's a reason fish aren't passing right now. But yeah, that can happen. And that fishway will go away before long. And if things aren't complicated enough already, we're looking at maybe sending the fish from the west towards Silver Lake. And so some of you might have heard of the Cotton Gin Mill Dam, which came out in 2017 in the Setauket River, which connects to the Taunton River. And that allowed river herring to get to Robbins Pond. And so I'm working on a project now to get a fishway into Bog Reservoir, and then fish could go to Monpont Pond. And so the question is, do we want them going from Monpont to Silver Lake from the west side? And it's something we'll have to discuss, but that is a very real management question that will come up as we send fish into Bog Reservoir. This project is underway now. We've got funding from the Taunton River Stewardship Council. They funded a very generous $25,000 grant for design and permitting. With those permits, my crew will design, fabricate, and install a fish ladder on this dam. The dam serves as a water control for a very large cranberry farmer, and so he wants to keep the water control, and so we'll put a fishway on it, and we'll send fish towards Silver Lake and see what happens. And I mentioned stream maintenance earlier. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. We're working with DP right now to try to get a policy on how stream maintenance should happen. When the Wetlands Protection Act came in the mid-'70s, there were exemptions made for like transportation planning, agriculture, mosquito control, and they left out fish passage. For some reason, it just wasn't part of the story. Herring wardens have been doing this work forever, for hundreds of years. And now, presently, people are starting to question how should it interact with the Wetlands Protection Act. So I'm advocating that we get a policy document from DEP. In the meantime, I work with towns. We prepared a guidance document on how to do this in a way that's safe, sustainable, and doesn't take out more than you should. And so we have that document. And we got really active during the pandemic. Our crew had to get outside, and so we did a lot of work in these 4 watersheds. And what we're finding more and more is these watersheds, the water is being reduced, and they don't flow like they used to. There's withdrawals for groundwater, surface waters, and a lot of these watersheds just don't have enough flow to leave them alone and let them scour out flow. Beyond tree falls and debris jams, things you commonly think about, what I'm seeing more and more is species of plants, wetland plants, that are just raising chaos in these channels. Swamp loosestrife, a couple species of water willows, and the invasive Phragmites. These come in when the flow is low, and they just encroach the channel, they choke the channel, and they'll cause flows to go over the banks, and then where you once had a river channel, you have wetland habitat. So I'm finding that stream maintenance is so much more than it used to have been previously. When you have a tree fall in the winter, you got to take the tree out. There's a lot of consideration for these wetland plants. They absolutely changed the Weir River in Hingham to a wetland until we went back there and tried to reclaim the channel. So it's something to work on. And again, I want to highlight that a large effort went on in the Jones River from 2015 forward. And here's your winter tree falls. And what they can do, they can block spring passage, but often fish find ways to sneak through. In the summer, when you get all this vine and plant growth, it's a death trap for fish that are passively migrating downstream. So it took a lot of work, and we left things like this. You know, that's a good place for wildlife and turtles to go on, so you don't take those out, but you can't let the channel just continue like this because it'll just change. So that's a big part we've been doing lately in the watershed. And now looking forward, I think we have to bring machines in certain places. This has been down in the Mascot River for invasive fanwort and milfoil. Here's some, I think this was loosestrife in Herringbrook, Pembroke. Island Creek Duxbury's mostly fanwort they're trying to deal with. And then the Central Plymouth County Water District Commission is going to purchase a hydro dredge. And hopefully that will be the first project that's used here at Forge Pond. So that's coming up. All right, let me move on to monitoring. And I'm going to briefly touch on the species that we spend the most time with. River herring. I'm going to not say much about American shad today. Rainbow smelt and American eel. That's a picture from the back river in Weymouth, by the way, where you can get some amazing photographs because they have a lot of fish there. And I do want to highlight in the Jones River, I think as much work has gone on here as any coastal river in Massachusetts for Diatomos fish monitoring. Again, a credit to this association. It's amazing how much has happened. My agency took an interest in smelt years ago, and we've stayed with it with some work with eel. The watershed began counting herring here, so that's quite a long time. And then more recently, there's been a bunch of work done. We have a new eel ramp up at Forge Pond Dam. We did a smelt egg deposition study post Elm Street Dam removal to see where smelt went after the dam came out. And then 2 graduate students are doing work in the river as well right now. So this represents a lot of information on this coastal river, and it's fantastic to have all this information available. So river herring, again, the most abundant Diatomos fish we have, the one that supported the largest fisheries. It's the one the public probably takes the greatest interest in as they come back right about now, and they come up our rivers and they have these epic migrations. And you can see them in high abundance at times. Here's the back river in Weymouth. It's a run that can have 500,000 fish at times. Historically, here's the Herring River in Harwich. Here's a run that could have a commercial harvest of 1 million fish. And the fish were packed up in barrels for ground fish bait and sold in Boston markets. That's all gone. I mean, this harvest isn't even happening. So a lot has changed, and it's really quite a story of loss. Here's a graphic. I don't know if you can see it very well. It combines spawning run counts for 4 rivers that have counts that go for 20 years or more. And so it goes back to 1996 to the present. This red line is when the state, we had a harvest ban come in for taking spawning run fish, dip netting fish in the spawning runs. Since that ban, you can see some modest improvements. And I think this is kind of an index or a proxy on what's happening all over the coast. We had, choppy runs before the ban. We had some high runs here, then we had a drought. It really caused poor recruitment for juveniles. And with that dropping that we saw here, DMF went to bat and said, we got to stop it. We're going to close down the fisheries. And we've seen some modest improvements. And so we're pretty much about where we were beforehand. So to me, this is modest improvements, and I'm hoping those numbers can keep going up with everyone's efforts. For the Jones River, again, it started 2005. Very low numbers. Keep in mind, in this period, the Wapping Road Dam limited to where they could go, pretty much to Furnace Brook, or the main stem. And then we started to see some improvements towards the end. And this is, to me, really encouraging. That's a nice upturn right there. And, of course, the Elm Street Dam came out here, making it impossible to keep that count going. But I think Jimmy's got counts going up at Forge Pond, as well as, I think, part of Furnace Brook as well.
Souls Pond.
Souls Pond. So, thank you for all your efforts. This information is really useful. And what I think can happen here is, with fish accessing Silver Lake, we could really see some improvements to these numbers going forward. And I'm hoping that'll happen. So again, not many big runs presently. Historically, 100 years ago, I think we probably had 20 runs that had a harvest of around 500,000 to 1 million fish. And presently, these are runs that have had counts of 200,000 or more. And among these, only 5 in red reached 500,000 at any point in the last 20 years. So it probably went from like 20 runs with a harvest of 500,000 to just 5 with counts, a census of 500,000. So we've really lost a lot of ground. But I also think it's an area we can gain ground, because these ones in red all have at least 250 acres of good spawning in nursery habitat. Silver Lake has got 640 acres. So we hope to see some improvements at Silver Lake. Another way to look at this is the counts, spawning run counts per acre. And so we take the average over a period of years, divided by the number of acres available. This is called North Shore, but it's really Boston area. The 2 highest runs we have numbers on are the Mystic River and the Back River. So these urban areas have the highest productivity in terms of spawning run counts per acre. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You come to this region, South Shore, and you can see the Jones is really low, but again, those numbers are torqued down by the Wapping Road Dam limiting where fish could go. So I think this number could go up. It should go up. And then the Cape's a mixed bag. The sad story in this graph is Buzzards Bay, where these numbers are just uniformly really low productivity on what these spawning nursery habitats are putting out for fish. So there's something going on in that region which is consistently concerning. And something happening in these urban areas that is pretty impressive. So let's watch this dot move upward in the next coming years, hopefully. Okay, let me move on to rainbow smelt. So this is a cold water fish. They grow fast. They don't live very long. They have antifreeze proteins that let them thrive in really cold situations. And they come up in the spring, right about now. They're moving right by us. They come up at night on flood tides, and they spawn just above the tidal interface. The eggs attach to the bottom, and they have to stick there for a week, 2-3 weeks before they hatch, and the juveniles go right back out to the estuary. And they provide some really nice fisheries. I think Phil could tell us about Quincy Bay. Here's a shot from the mid-60s in Quincy Bay. And tremendous fisheries were there that faded away probably in the late 80s. And a lot of people enjoyed catching smelt because they're such a great fish to eat. Not too long ago in these places. So why are they declining? This graph, this slide could be used for any diatom species, really. We've caught too many. We've done a good job bringing back predators, but we haven't paid a lot of attention to prey populations. So a lot of predators have come back at a time. Their prey, meaning herring, eel, smelt, are at historic lows. And then habitat alteration may be one of the biggest concerns. We're really changing our landscape. We're changing the way we use water, these coastal resources. Again, here's a smelt egg. It's got to sit there for 1 to 3 weeks. It's got to be exposed to whatever's happening in the watershed. Picture stormwater runoff when this egg is trying to, respire and live and grow. It's a difficult life strategy for our present day conditions in these coastal rivers. Also looming is climate change. This figure shows red where smelt used to be found down to here. In the last 75 years, the southern extent of their range has moved forward 400 miles, moved northward. They're cold water fish, so now here's where they're found. Really, the southernmost population now is the Wheeliantic River in Wareham. So pretty amazing to think about this. I mean, picture if this was an alligator or a great white shark. It would be in the news. People would be talking about it. It's smelt, and no one knows this is happening. They're just moving northward. So here's our fyke net. It's right up here in the river. We put it in on Monday. We haul it for 3 days, and then it comes out for the day. And it catches all kinds of fish that are moving up. And here's a school of smelt right here that just missed the net.
Oh, when was that taken?
Yeah.
Brad?
They missed the memo. Yeah, it's not around the net. And so we collect biological data on whatever we catch, and we also collect age samples from fish in the Four and the Jones. We used to sacrifice fish. Now we take a few scales and let them go. We just don't feel there's enough to really do that. We catch all kinds of fish here. We've caught 36 species of fish in this net. 10 of those are diatomos, so 10 different diatomous species in this river. And you see, the tomcod, white perch, big and small, river herring. We've caught 4 species of flounder, which I'd never guess. We've caught a couple Searan trout, a weak fish. So really, you never know what's going to be in the net when you open it up, so it's always exciting. But it is a smelt net first and foremost. And here's the smelt data. You can see it's pretty choppy from 2005 to present. 2 big spikes, but what these spikes were age 1 fish. So really small smelt were caught in big numbers. We got excited. We said, okay, next year we're going to see age 2s, and it didn't happen both years. Just didn't see the age 2s in both years. Also concerning, the last 5 years on the low end. Here we've seen some up and downs. It's been kind of low the last 5 years, so we're hoping to see something improve. Years ago you'd see schools like that up at Elm Street, 5,000 fish. It's been a while since we've seen big schools up that far. We take this data and we convert it to geometric means so we can kind of reduce some of the variability in the data. And we see it's still a flat trend. Those are the 2 years that are high with lots of variability there. And then here's that recent trend that is a little bit concerning. Overall, a fairly flat trend. Hate to see it go down further, and would love to see a few more year classes. When things are good, you'll see a bump like this extend for a while, and that hasn't happened yet. We also get information on white perch, eel, river herring. The same thing, we can look at the data over time. White perch, fairly flat, 1 big spike that occurred, and then eel's been fairly consistent. River herring, it's interesting, we see juveniles in this net. And you can see more fish in the latter part of the series, a couple of decent years here. What I'm hoping will happen is a couple of these graphs with Elm Street out should improve. And I can't guarantee it, but I really feel like between lamprey, we catch lamprey too, white perch, river herring, shad, we should see some improvements with that dam out because those populations should have more places to spawn and better survival for their juveniles. And then for yellow eels, there's something called the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, which has an eel stock assessment that I participate in, representing Massachusetts. And the eel trap in the Jones River has been used as an index of population abundance in the stock assessment. There are no yellow eel indices of abundance in the stock assessment in New England. And yellow eels are that age class that before they are ready to spawn, they live in the rivers. And so here's the Jones River, again a flat trend. This is what we catch in the fyke net. I submitted these data, here's Braintree, a few more eels. So I submitted these data to the stock assessment update, and I'm hoping it'll be adopted. And it might be the first New England index of abundance for yellow eel in the stock assessment. So that's another example of how these data are being used to support management. A little bit on the difference in ages. Here's a 1-year-old smelt. Here's a 3-year-old smelt. We're lucky there was a study done years ago in the Jones River that aged smelt, and then we published a study a few years ago and found a huge difference. The white right here is age 1 fish. Back in the 70s and 80s, very few, 6% were age 1. Fast forward a few years, 55% were age 1. And you've got fewer and fewer of these older fish. So this is not what you want to see in a population. You want to see a balanced age distribution. You've got young fish, you've got old fish. We have lots of young fish coming up the Jones right now. And why is that important? The females need to produce eggs. An age 1 smelt produces about 9,000 eggs, age 2, 25. And then 3 and 4 up around 40,000. So all of a sudden, the run is dominated by these little fish. They do see that in a lot of fish and wildlife populations. When populations stressed, they mature younger to just try to help, try to contribute to the population. And so that's what we're seeing here. And so we can look at eggs per recruit, which is the number of eggs that a smelt produces in their lifetime. And there was a drop from the earlier period to that study period of 38%. So the average smelt coming up the river is producing 38% less eggs in the two periods. So that's not a great sign. We published this study a couple of years ago. But again, this is the information that can be used and we can help understand what's happening. One last thing on smelt, we can learn about environmental issues. The red line is the onset of when the run begins in this spike net out here. The blue line is the peak of the run. And you can see since when we began in 2005, it's gradually declining. This x-axis, the y-axis is Julian date. So when they're getting here earlier, it means they're arriving earlier, they're peaking earlier. It's a significant decline. It's actually a 2-week difference in a 17-year period. That's pretty rapid, that they're responding that quickly in a 2-week period. They're just coming earlier. So we're definitely warming up a little bit. Let me move on to American eel. Really, it's the only Diatomos species in North America. They're pymictic, which means there's one spawning stock and there's no homing. You know, lamprey, river herring, shad, they all typically home to where they were born. In this case, there is no homing for the species. The semoparasites between they spawn once and die. It's quite a difficult ending for them. They have a high age of maturity. They have to be 8 to 15 years old before they're ready to go off the Sargasso Sea and spawn. And they have lots of fecundity. Remember the smelt fecundity? A 1-year-old had 9,000 eggs. These females have 3 to 10 million eggs. So they're saying, okay, I have one shot to spawn. I'm going to get a really big size. I'm going to be large, and I'm going to go for it and hold a lot of eggs, and hopefully I can make it to the Sargasso Sea. And the same species from Greenland, Brazil. Pretty amazing. Very successful fish overall. They occupy more habitat types than any fish in North America. So, really interesting fish. Are they amphibious? Not really. They can climb up wet surfaces when they're young. If it's wet and kind of scoured out, they can climb right up it. And it's pretty amazing to watch them do this. Occasionally you'll see one out of the water. This is the center line of Elm Street on a rainy day a couple of years ago in April.
Oh my God.
This eel was going up the street. And I was like, where's this eel going? And I was heading to Cumberland Farms after this. I thought I'd given it a ride. I said, okay. It must know where it wants to go, so I left it alone. But it was going up the middle of the road on Elm Street.
That was this year?
A couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
A few years ago. Yeah. So I've seen that a few times before. So the Atlantic State Marine Fisheries Commission is an interstate group that manages migratory fish that cross state boundaries, and they manage eels. They have the eel stock assessment I mentioned, and these are all the glass eel stations that are used in the stock assessment. Ours is the Jones River Eel Trap. It's an accepted index of abundance in the stock assessment. And here it is. It's this little trap. It seems like ridiculous that it's actually used, but we catch a lot at times. You might notice this dam is no longer here. That's gone. And that could change the catchability. We started in 2001, and if we feel like the catchability is drastically changed, we may have to change the station. But for now, I think this is our 20th year coming up. We caught a lot more early on, kind of a downward slope. And so if you tune the data with geometric means, you can see it's a significant downward slope with less variability in recent years. And so we are seeing fewer eels at this trap station. But this is what is modeled into the stock assessment as an index of abundance. So it's nice to have this data that you folks contribute to going towards that purpose. Also environmentally, we're learning about eels. And so here is the average ocean temperature off the coast, 1 to 5 degrees C in January to March. Here's a Julian date. Here's the date eels arrive. And when it's warm, they come early. And when it's cold, when it's warm, they come early. And when it's cold, they come late. It's a very significant trend. If we put this trend up for river temperature, there's no significance. So it really seems that late winter, early spring ocean temperatures were driving these little guys swimming from the Sargasso Sea. When it's warm, they swim faster and they arrive earlier. So pretty interesting to see that tight correlation there. And then I mentioned how smelt were coming about 2 weeks earlier. With eels, they're coming a little bit earlier. It's actually a significant trend, but it's nowhere near even a week. So different species are responding differently to the same type of cues. Smelt, for some reason, are coming much earlier. Eels, they're coming a little bit earlier. I saw glass eels on the Cape at 2 towns the last 2 days, and to me, that's early. March 18th, they showed up in Dennis, in Orleans on the 18th, and so maybe this graph will change more as time goes on. And then we're building eel ramps. When you take out dams, that's what you want to do. When you can't take out dams, sometimes you put in an eel ramp to give them better passage. And we put out 12 of these since 2007. The last one is, well, let's see. Oh, it's cut off. Oh, that's too bad.
Sorry.
The last one's right here at Forge Pond, and that's the most recent eel ramp. And we learn a lot about eels from these. We help them pass, but we also seem to garner some good local interest and stewardship from them. So I think it's a good educational tool as well. So here it is. Here's the latest one up at Forge Pond Dam. It's got a siphon pump. It's not even a pump, it's a siphon hose. And they come up this ramp and they plop in the tank, and then they're captured and they're sent over here. We get mainly H1 or H2 eels at this site. You don't see glass eels. With the dams out, with the stream maintenance, with more flow, we might see glass eels advance up further because in the past they've been held up, I think. Okay, so let me wrap up by just giving a quick summary on American eel status. Again, I think a lot of the work that you folks are involved with, we're involved with, it's raising awareness on eel. I think we're seeing more stewardship interest in eel, which really wasn't there a while ago. And then conservation management starting to take place with interstate management plans. And I think we're also improving their passage with dam removals and eel ramps. So all that's very positive, but I'm also concerned. I showed you the graph with river herring showing some modest improvements since the ban. You're not really seeing that with eel. All the eel graphs are kind of flat or tilted downward. So something's going better for river herring in Massachusetts, where eel in Massachusetts and the East Coast, we're not seeing a great response. So something is concerning. One of the concerns, of course, is these things are worth a lot of money in Asian markets. And Maine can harvest these eels, and we see a fair amount of poaching of fishermen that come down and take our eels because they're worth so much. And they ship them live overnight to these Asian markets where they grow them up and they sell them for food in Japan. So I'm concerned about that illegal activity. I'm concerned about their freshwater habitat. We're seeing more anoxia, hypoxia, less of the water column available than perhaps used to have. And eels like to use the bottom, so maybe there's less habitat available to eels. And then again, we're warming, the ocean's warming, our eels, is that favorable to their eel migration and their survival at sea? These are question marks moving forward. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but I think that's it. Yep. So here's a shot upstream that was once watered by the Elm Street Dam, now it's dewatered. It's a beautiful, to me, a shad spawning pool riffle complex that wasn't there before. So I'm really hopeful for shad at these sites here. And I just want to thank you all very much for your interest in coming out here.
Brad, we'll take some questions, eh?
Okay, this time, sure.
Yeah?
Any questions, folks?
Anybody have any questions?
What should the velocity of the water be in a man-made fishway for eels, glassine eels, to travel up? My point is, more effort should be taking precedence for the eels as well as the younger year herring to maintain the flow for a longer period of time daily to make sure that the eels can get up.
Excellent question. Gino, Chair of the Pembroke Conservation Commission. Good to see you, Gino.
Great.
Tough question. If you guys remember the steep pass up at Elm Street, the steep pass fishway, the exit velocity of that fishway will not allow glass eels to go through it. So a lot of conventional fishways were designed not thinking about glass eels. It's very recently we've been doing that. They need a very low velocity. The average, concrete weir in a notch weir fishway, they can't pass through. So either you have to change your designs, which the new design at Forge Pond would allow anything to pass, or you've got to think about an eel ramp. And so I think for many decades we built fishways without thinking about eels. Once they get to be, you know, a little bit of size, they can negotiate the velocity of an average fishway. Glass eels can't.
So Brad, how do you think Silver Lake, like there's a lot of white perch in Silver Lake. Do you think that those fish will migrate into the river and back and forth now if they're able to do that?
It's a fascinating question because white perch will landlock readily.
Mhm.
They're very flexible that way, and they landlock all over the place. So they might have been there from before the dams, or they might have snuck down from Furnace Brook
Right,
in Pembroke.
right,
But what I see happen is, we catch them in the fight net and they're ripe and running.
yeah.
So those are diatoms. And they want to come up and spawn either main stem or ponds.
Hmm.
So my guess is right now you've got landlocked white perch, and then you've got diatomous white perch, and they will mingle and spawn, and they'll be flexible. So I think they're a species I'm really bullish on them doing better now they can get in and out of the lake. But, you know, is there a genetic component? You know, over hundreds of years, you'll see, you know, the genotypes trend towards a landlocked, you know, reproductive life strategy. So there's questions there we don't know about, but I think they're very flexible. We were doing some stream work in May a while ago, and we had a jam that was impassable. We knocked it out, and we started moving upstream, and before you know it, there was a couple white perch that were passing us.
Mhm.
And so they were coming from the estuary, and they were held up by that jam. And then
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, so they're moving along, and they were little males that were probably, you know, just barely mature. So let's keep an eye on white perch as we go forward. Hold on, Gene, I'm gonna take them behind you. Yep.
Since the Pilgrim is no longer in training, fish in its cooling system,
Yep.
are you seeing an effect, and where would you expect to see an effect from
Yeah.
that?
It's a good question. I looked at that data, you know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I haven't looked at it more recently. When I looked at it, there wasn't a strong mortality component for diatomous fish. They were taking some smelt, they were taking some eel. They were more impacting, to my eye, marine species. And so, hard to say, but either way, it's a chunk of mortality, it's gone. And so you would like to think that there could be a benefit there, but there wasn't a massive spike for any one species, for diatomous species. But I think it's one of those things, cross it off the list. It shouldn't be causing a problem anymore. Gino?
Oh, yeah, unless there's somebody else.
Yep.
The white perch, do they require deeper water, and can they pass with the herring at the speeds 3 to 5 per
Yes.
second?
An adult white perch can navigate any fishway we have. They're very flexible with their spawning habitat, and you know, in the Chesapeake they spawn by millions in very, you know, turbid water, estuarine water. So they can spawn in Silver Lake, they can spawn in the main stem. The Silver Lake will produce more white perch. You know, there's more habitat for them. So I think we'd love to see them get up into, you know, Silver Lake.
We have them in Oldham Pond and Furnace Pond,
Yeah,
and Glover Mill where the counter is on Hockenbach Street. On
Right.
occasion I've caught them in.
yeah. Yeah, with the advance of time, I'm realizing that I'm one of the old timers now, but what I remember clearly when I was younger, big runs of white perch in a lot of these rivers that we would fish on. We had no idea they were diatomous. We just knew that they came in and you could catch the heck out of them at a certain time. A lot of those big runs are gone, but they could benefit from some of these big watershed-wide projects, I think. So that's a species I'm really hoping that we can see them come back.
One more tough question for you.
Okay?
And it's because so many of us, as you know well, are suffering in our ponds from port water quality.
Yeah.
Is there, and I don't know whether I read it or I was told it, but it was hypothesized, shall I say, that migrating fish, alewives that come up, spawn, juveniles that leave, take a lot of nutrients with them. Is this true?
There've been a few studies.
And is there a way that we can amplify those studies
Right.
in our
I would
process at Silver Lake?
Yeah, it's a great question because I've been beating my head against a few water supplies on the coast,
Yeah.
trying to get fish into water supplies where there's no passage, and Silver Lake's one of them. And water supplies are sensitive to what does it mean to bring these fish into the lake. And I haven't over-promoted this because to me the studies are not conclusive, but there's been a couple studies, mostly in Maine. One in Maine found an export of phosphorus.
That's what I was
and the juveniles are taking up as they grow an export of phosphorus. And so to me, that's positive, but to me, I'd like to see more studies and maybe a little more information on what they really export. We know that lamprey import nutrients that are really favorable to these streams, just like Pacific salmon do. And so the nutrient export-import question is really important, and I think it'd be nice to know more about that.
Great, we should talk about that. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Everybody give him a big cheer. Great, we're getting to that point where we might have enough people to vote. So, I know you don't think we do anything around here, but as you know, we flood like knee-high, right? So, a few years ago, we were able to secure a grant from the Seaport Economic Council. Ever hear of it? No. Seaport Economic, state Economic Council, headed by the Attorney General. No, the Lieutenant Governor, sorry about that. We were able to get a $125,000 grant to do planning on what to do about sea level rise here. You know, I think I had a question in one of the annual reports, shall we stay or shall we go, right? Shall we stay or should we just clean it all up and let, you know, the water have its way and just leave? Or should we stay and try and promote a long-term stewardship, education about climate change and species shift, and continue to work from here for the next 100 years or whatever? And so that's what this study is about. So we got money, we hired GZA, Geoenvironmental, and Habib Associates. And GZA is doing all of the mapping and whatnot of sea level rise. And when he came here, we had a few meetings during COVID, and he came here and he said, "You see roof pine, roof on the porch? 2100, that's where the water is." I still get chills when I remember that. So I was like, okay. So, you know, I had wanted, and Alex Mansfield and I had conjured up this plan, we'll float the buildings. And I was like, nah, that ain't gonna happen. Not right away anyway. Because of the way the tide comes in, it'll crank the buildings, it won't float the buildings. So we allowed GZA to go ahead with their plans, and then we had Habib and Scott Bancroft, who works with Habib. Scott, might as well come on over. Scott is our neighbor on Landing Road. Scott bought the poorhouse a few years back. Found some. Made it poor. And the architects put together some designs. So we invited Scott to come and show you where we're at with that. Our report is due in June. We've been working with the town of Kingston. Matt Pinella is here. You guys don't know Matt. He's the conservation agent. He's great, hardworking, my kind of guy. We're working with the town because of Landing Road flooding. So it started with Stony Brook, and it involves the railroad track, and it involves Eversource, and they're coming tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to have Scott tell you where it's at, and you can see the pictures if you haven't seen them already, and begin to ask questions. But obviously, if we go with something like this, it is going to require a lot of effort to do the capital fundraising and get it going. So just, you know, think about that as you're listening.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. So it's been a pleasure that Pine invited us onto this team because it's been a lot of fun. It's been great working with GZA, working with all you guys. It's really nice. It's really come together nicely. I think we still have a ways to go, but you know, I think we have a plan. We have a concept, you know, and this is just a planning grant. It's not detailed design, so we still got a ways to go.
Right.
Anyway, so I was trying to go through some of my old pictures that I've gotten over the years, and I believe this is an Emily Drew photo. I think you have this.
Yeah, it might be, it came from the
Might have come
library.
from the library, yeah.
Yep.
I think this photo is pretty interesting because it shows the landing when it was actually functional. And there's 3 points that I'm trying to get across here. One of them was connection. The Drew House and the Shiverick boat buildings, they were all connected along the wharf there. And I think that's something that we want to do on this project. We want to pull the Drew House and the boat buildings together and bring back that connection.
Yep.
The other thing is, this sail loft. It's interesting how this is built up. They were thinking ahead because of the flooding in there. So that's raised up on piles. It's at the same level as the Drew House. The Drew House is actually, if you look at it closely, it's built up onto a mound. They were thinking ahead in 1780. But down, and then you look at the Shiverick building, and it's down in the gully, so that wasn't well planned, So I think with this new project, our idea is to, raise this up, so we're up here, And the third item is, we like how it's natural, Pine wants to bring some of that back, we've lost a lot of that. So right now, there's a lot of sheet piling along there, and it's kind of a drop off, it's kind of messy, so I think eventually they want to bring some of this back. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions as I go, just holler.
Yeah, I do.
All right.
Explain that what you call the shipbuilding building, or how was that connected? Where was that?
This was behind the Drew House. I don't think it was actually physically connected. I've seen photographs looking in this direction. I think it was a separate utility building, like an outbuilding.
What,
The Shiverick shop is the one barely
Yeah,
in the
this is the
corner.
Shiverick right here.
yeah.
That's the building right there.
But so, what happened to that building? It's just pointing out.
It was torn down. The way it was told to me was that was the sail loft,
Okay, yeah, that's what I was
you
questioning.
know?
So
So
it's
it
not,
it went away a long time ago. And, I mean, Mackenzie owned the Drew House for a while, so I think it was gone by the time he was here. And that
Yeah.
was the 50s.
Yeah, this is probably, 1910, early 1900s, this photograph.
Yeah, the photo
so,
is, yeah.
Yeah, I
I don't
haven't
know,
seen
Peter,
many
do you
photographs
know
of
any
that.
more than that about it? No?
Yeah, all right. Cool. All right. All right, this is a drawing that was put together by GZA. They're the maritime engineers, and this is interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but this is basically showing almost like a 100-year flood. It's a FEMA floodplain, and it's showing a storm surge, an 11-foot high storm surge. And you can see this is the Drew House right here, and that's pretty much high and dry. Everything over here is underwater. Currently, the buildings that we're standing in, those are at 8 foot. So, you'd have 11 feet, you'd have 3-4 feet of water in here. So, the plan is to raise it up. We're looking at raising it up to another 7 feet above what it is at now, bring it up to 15 feet. So that would be 4 feet
No,
above.
we're talking about the boat shop now.
Yeah, just the boat shop, right. Right, the Drew House, nothing there.
And this goes away.
Yeah, so this would have to be replaced, the original Shiverick boat building would be shifted, raised, then a new building would be built next to it, and that's what the next slot's gonna show. Yeah, so this is some of our early concepts, this is the Drew House, as you can see, it's kind of on a high point. So the design intent was to raise this up and make it, almost the same elevation. This is up at 15. This is the first floor of the Drew House is at 17, so we're pretty close now. The intent was to move the main entrance of this building.
But that's a new building.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta
this
tell
is-
them that doesn't exist yet.
Right, this is all new. This is the Shiverick boat building,
Yeah.
which had been shifted north and raised up. And everything to the right of that, that's all new. So this is the new entrance. The entrance is at the north side, which is the high point of the site. So if, you get flooding down here, you're gonna still be able to get into the building and out of the building without wearing waders, So this works out pretty good too. We've got a handicap accessible spot here, parking spot for wheelchair accessibility. We've got ramp to get into the main entrance, and then inside there's an elevator to get up to the second floor. This new building, it's basically two stories. The third, this is like a half-story attic storage space. But, it's fully accessible. We had talked about, timber frame to try and keep it look traditional. We wanted to use materials that were similar to at the Drew House to reinforce that connection between the two buildings. Then we're looking at building a stone wall along Landing Road and creating a walkway along here, to reinforce the Bay Circuit path, which is kind of like stopped now. So we want to have something that was wide open along here, and so that you won't get killed walking along Landing Road,
How does that integrate with the train bridge? They can't go under there.
Right, that's the problem.
So we
Yeah.
all
The
draw
train
on
bridge,
there.
right.
I just, as pushing baby stroller under there,
I
and
know.
falling down and say, what do you want to kill your kid? And
Yeah.
no, I want to take a walk.
I know. I walk my dog down there, I go under that bridge, I
Oh, the
run.
flashing,
I run, because it's,
called the flashing stoplight.
yeah. Well, I'm hoping that they do something, 100 years ago, the road was up along,
Well, actually, I could speak to that. a
I'd
little
love to
later,
hear it, yeah.
But rather than now, yeah.
well, hopefully they do something,
Well, I think those are the questions that we have to raise right
Yeah.
now. And, we don't need to close that under the, now, today,
Yeah,
20 years maybe, So we have time to plan, and that's the value of having the town of Kingston involved with this right now.
yeah, so this slide here, this is basically showing, this is the old buildings, pretty much ghosted, and you can see how low they are. They're pretty much sunken down below Landing Road. So our plan is to raise it up, and these buildings are now sitting on piles, and, you kind of lose sight of the piles with that wall there. This is the Shiverick building, so it's here. So this has basically been shifted to the left and raised. This is the two-story building, brand new. Then we're gonna have a little connector building in between the two, and that will have like wood storage, kind of a utility building. And this is another view of the handicap ramp going up to the main entrance.
No chimney, huh?
Yeah, well, we could add it in there. Keep that stove, right? The stove going.
Just thinking of the history of it, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is a view from the north. And the intent was to keep the parking in this area down here. We're pretty much where it is. That's where all the area is in the site. So this is the Shiverick building. We'd have like a secondary entrance there, which most people would be using that unless it's a public function. Have a deck that's raised up in piles. And then the ramps we're showing here to get into the building, those would have to be movable. They'd probably be on some type of wheels and would be movable like a block and tackle or pulley or something. And they'd be able to be pushed out underneath the building for storage. This area here, that's a stair addition. We need a fire stair inside the two-story building to get us down to grade. There's a little deck that you can't really see right here, but that there's a stair that comes down behind that ramp. That would be where the lumber and things gets loaded into the building on that deck. This is the infamous power pole that's there. We're working very hard to get rid of that. That's gonna end up right, it's gonna impede the view from up here. But yeah, that's
What are you
it.
doing tomorrow at 9, Scott?
What's happening tomorrow night?
Eversource is coming.
Oh, are they? Great.
Come down if you're free.
Yeah. Then the last slide I had, this is pretty much an aerial view looking from the east. This is the parking lot over here, and, you know, the plan is to recreate some of that marshland over there. Probably won't be this much, but something, you know? And these are the ramps. That's that deck I was talking about, you know, a truck would have to come in here to offload lumber. You can see the piles from this side. This is the main entrance into the high spot of the site. Now at the Drew House, one of the issues at the Drew House is the stairs. I don't know if you guys have been in there, but it's really tight. It's like a C-shaped stair that's been there since 1780. And this,
Belongs in a boat.
yeah, it really, very difficult getting furniture up and down there. So we came up with the idea of adding an addition on the back, which would take, you know, in the location of the porch. It's a 3-story addition and would allow a stair to run full height from the, you know, the basement all the way up to the second floor. Right now, there's no stair down to the basement. It's like a trap door or something, a rope. So this would at least allow you to get up and down, and we'd have a code, a stair that meets code to get up there and be able to get it, furniture up and down. Now this is a flood wall that GZA has requested that we need to build, and it's got like a floodgate in it. So that would prevent water flooding to get into the basement. What else? Yeah, so the solar panels, there's a couple solar panels that we'd have to move to the high roof. But, you know, we're trying to keep, this kind of looks like that original photograph I showed, you know, just a gable extension coming off the back of the house. We met with Craig from the Historical Society, and he seemed to think that was reasonable. What else? So once the ramps go underneath the 2-story building here, the first level would be pretty much tank space, blue mussels, kelp tank program space, you know, possible boat storage, there'd be toilet rooms on the first floor. Up on the second floor, it's mostly meeting space. It's a large meeting area.
This is where we would be having.
Yeah, yeah, it's-
Only it would be bigger.
Yeah, yeah. And you'd have office space up there as well as like a little kitchenette. Then there'd be a balcony on the second floor overlooking the river. Yeah, so then, you know, this is the Shiverick building to the right, and that's mostly utility, boat building functions. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Well, I'm still concerned about the parking.
Yeah.
If you come up here,
You're right down the street. Why are you concerned about that?
wow,
What do you mean you're?
because everybody's gonna have to park at my house.
That's right. I was just thinking that, Sarah.
Yeah.
I mean, because you come up here on a normal super high tide, and you can't get out the door here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and when the site is flooded, that is a problem. It's not really a solvable problem, you know. People would have to park across the street, you know, Bradford House, you know. It's flooded.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't see that whole parking area is gonna be possible.
Yeah, because, you know, during a peak storm, it just for reference, you know, 2018, the storm was what, 10.4 feet?
2000 and what?
2018?
It was, you know, let's see, I go by the tide
Yeah.
level, not the geo
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
right? So, right next to Rob over there, next to his knee, that's how high the water was in here, okay? Which is a 14 plus by the tide chart.
Yeah, all right,
Okay.
yeah, that's a different scale. Yeah.
Actually, it's probably
Yeah.
closer to 15, but,
Yeah.
you know, so if that was, so if we're 8 on the ground, that's, yeah, it's more like 11 and a half.
Yeah,
I would say it's more
yeah.
like 11 and a half to your question.
Yeah, so, you know, the intent is to bring it up to 15.
Yeah.
But, you know, during.
But I mean, I think that I think there are options. I'd like to talk to the Historical Society across the street, you know, in terms of working out mutual advantageous thing. I'd like this to be a historic district. There's a lot more that I think we should be doing in terms of dealing with the fact that look at the whole road. I mean, the
Right.
town has to do the whole road,
This
right?
is all
So-
underwater,
right.
yeah.
So, and that's critical to people on River Street, it's critical to, people on, that run this way to their Duxbury homes. But, there's, I've had a lot of, ideas because my mother grew up in New Orleans, so I think of Lake Pontchartrain and the huge, raising up the road but making it out of wood so that, you can have life growing underneath it instead of asphalting the hell out of everything, But, so I think that there are ways to approach it. I thought about doing that here in the parking lot too, having the deck, everything high, but it'd be expensive. It'd be a lot of wood and a lot of lumber, and to what end? To park a car, really?
Right.
Maybe we can figure out where to put the cars. So there's a lot of discussion to be had. We're hoping that this will motivate that discussion. We don't have all the answers by any means. We haven't discussed all the questions yet.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering how you decided what needs, what were the needs, and how the design meets the needs of the organization.
Yeah, we've been working with Pine and the group here for, it's probably been over a year, right? So we had a bunch of meetings where we sat down, we developed a program, list of rooms, areas, and we kind of worked that out with them, working out the paint room, all that stuff is in here.
Basically, what I think we said was, we want to keep the boat shop going, we want to keep the traditions going. We want to not have to lift up some of that equipment that weighs, not quite a ton maybe, but it's pretty expensive and it's very heavy. So we don't want to have to do that. So we need to satisfy that problem in order to continue those traditions. But what's more appropriate to sea level rise than building boats? I don't know. So the other thing was, in our thinking, is that the future needs more. Food scarcity is going to be a real thing. Climate change is going to bring a lot of food scarcity. You heard Brad, the condition of our fisheries and stuff like that. There's quite a bit of interest in, farming at sea in such a way that improves the ocean's chemistry. What I've been reading and learning, kelp and blue mussels and stuff like that can create microclimates in the ocean that is beneficial to the ocean, so it would attract lobsters and other shellfish and other fish, in fact, because it's a healthy environment, and you don't have to feed it. You don't have to add nutrients and whatnot. So I would very much like to, explore growing kelp and mussels, and when Scott was mentioning tanks and aquaculture, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about tilapia, we're not talking about, we're talking about working with the ocean and working more with DMF and working with other people. Now, whether that's a good idea or not a good idea, I don't know, but I did scrape off a lot of blue mussels from a float that came in. And they're still alive in the river, by the way, and that was November of 2020. So I'm thinking they can survive here now, which I wasn't sure about at all until they're still alive in the cage for whatever reason. So I think that there's a lot to learn. I mean, this is where the Drew House comes in, and the idea of having graduate students there that are teaching us something, not just, trying to figure out how to study, but are really engaged in some problem-solving innovation strategies for the health of the future, rather than just how can we exploit the present. So that, but it's going to take a big community effort, in order to make use of that and in order to accomplish it. So we don't know yet. That's why Scott is here, and that's why we're talking about it today. This is the beginning of the conversation. Because we'll only need about 7 million or something like that.
I think every time I hear that number, it keeps going up.
Well, I told them 5 to begin with, and they said, "Yeah, you can't do this for 5." And the way that the costs are going right now, I don't think I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is it a good enough idea to want to do it? And is this the right spot? You know, we got a lot of history, we got a lot of tradition, we got a lot of energy, we got a lot of more protection than most places that are flooding. And Kingston's gonna need the help. So, you know, I think it's worth it for 100 years or so, and then, you know, but to build it in such a way that either we can float the future, or we can just take things down and leave no trace. Because I do think we owe that to the future.
Yeah.
We might run into a stone wall, but that'll be it.
Anything else?
Great, Scott.
All right, thank you.
Just getting this set up. Okay. Hi, I'm Jimmy Powell. I work here. So I have no prepared remarks or anything. I just wanted to get a discussion going about the herring count, which starts on April 1st and runs until May 31st. There are sign-up sheets. We've got one right here that I'll pass around. There's also a sign-up sheet over there. There's one out there, and there's one between Jason.
And I bet you can do it online too.
Not yet, but soon. So that's one of the things we wanted to discuss. I actually kind of wanted to poll the room. Some of our herring counters are in here. We've gone back and forth on the idea of scheduling time blocks for people. Some people want it, some people get turned off by it. So I kind of just wanted, like, any show of hands, do people want scheduled times to count? Like any, Sarah? All right, so
Let me define that. So,
Yeah.
like, what I've done in the past is sort of slotted myself in.
You're very good at
Right.
Yeah,
So-
so the same time every day. Both sites usually too, right?
Right, but it's just different for everybody, right? Everybody, you know, I'm sort of a creature of routine, so that works for me, but others just do it
Yeah.
ad
So
hoc, so I.
last year to the email list, which these sheets are mostly to collect your emails, so we can update you on the count status. Last year to our email list, we sent out basically a spreadsheet to sign up for a time block. Only a few people filled it out, so it was really that's kind of where I come in. Like, is this really worth the effort? Like, people who are punctual generally schedule themselves pretty well. And
So
people,
not everybody knows what you're talking about. So we have
Well, good.
the blocks of time during the day.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, you count from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And there needs to be what is it? It's 7 to 11, 11 to 3, and 3 to 7.
Right.
There are time blocks that we want a certain number of counts in. That's really mostly for DMFs.
It's the model that generates the population estimate, needs to have a stratified random sample
Yep.
with certain numbers in each of the 3 time periods.
Right. Yeah. You will.
So you sign up for 7 to 11 in the morning, but you can go at any time during that 7 to 11 period. Or 11 to 3, and you can go any time there for 10 minutes.
And so
you don't stay for an hour or 3 hours or.
No, in fact, you shouldn't do back-to-back counts. You shouldn't just do a continuous count. You should do 10 minutes, go do something else, do another count if you want to. So a lot of the details for this stuff, we have a herring count training taking place at both of our sites. If you guys have our newsline, you might have seen something about this already. But we're going to be doing an in-person training next
Sunday.
week. Yeah, next Sunday at both of our sites. Check the newsline if you want the details for that.
Could you say where the sites are?
Yes, so Stoll's Pond off of Elm Street, 215 Elm Street, right?
Oh, this is where George and Martha get to
Yes.
stand up.
It is George and Martha's generously provide us access to Stoll's Pond, which is part of the Furnace Brook tributary. It breaks off from the main stem of the Jones, but it's traditionally where a lot of our herring go to spawn, so it's an important count. And then there is the Forge Pond, Brockton Dam at Lake Street count, which is, we really want like a bigger focus on that count this year. Unfortunately, we don't get that many counters out there. We really could use them because we want to know how many fish are using that ladder currently.
Can I just clarify? So the time commitment is
10 minutes.
10 minutes,
10 minutes.
a day for how many days?
2 months.
Every day?
Whatever day you can pick.
That's,
So it could be 10 days for a week.
Yes.
We have some people who count 1 day a week. We have some people who count every day. It's really what you can do.
Yeah.
Ideally,
That
we
you
would
can
have
commit
more
to.
people counting more frequently, but not everybody can commit to that. Like, I'm not expecting miracles. Really, like anything you guys can do. Like, even like tell your friends
Yeah.
to get like a certain number of counts out there. Whatever that number is still useful, as long as it's distributed fairly evenly and doesn't. But that's for us to figure out later. But anyway, so that's the main thing I really wanted to say is just, so there are these sign-up sheets, one right there, one out there, one right there, and one that will go around. Please sign up, please put down your email, please tell your friends. We could definitely use more counters this year. So Souls Pond's data has always been pretty good. The one at Martha Mutri's place. Lake Street did not get very many counters last year, so we
And
need.
it's right next to the high school, you guys, the
Well-
athletic. You know, every game, go over and do some counts. While they're doing, intermission, or the other guy scored, or whatever it is, you gotta walk away from. It's easy. Easy peasy.
Yep, and it's fun. I mean, you get out there, you just.
Hey man, when you see a fish, you want
So
it back.
last year we did not have that many fish, so it did kind of turn a lot of people off.
Well, we had
But-
blockages downstream
And-
though, then that's the next topic.
And that we are going to hopefully be exploring for those next week ahead of the fish count. So, but as time allows.
Actually, I would like to see if anybody in this room is interested in getting in the water with us and moving trees around.
Yeah, that's another
Okay.
volunteer thing to organize.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
Yep.
see?
Should have a sign-up sheet for that. Nat, you good?
I get
All right.
And zero counts can be boring, but they're valuable.
That's
So
what. Yes.
A zero count is still worth a lot.
Yes. A lot of people got turned off last year because we
I'm gonna
really had a.
recruit the Wingate people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make up something and start recruiting.
And
people.
we're gonna
I'm
go
walk
around
up the
at
entire
the
Lake
neighborhood
Street
there.
and go recruit the people up there if we can't
Yeah.
get people in our room.
So yeah, so last year, I think people got bored because there weren't a lot of fish, but we need those zero counts. We need those.
It's
those.
very depressing. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's depressing, but it's still good data. We still need it. So
The other thing that I should mention is that the Sylvia Place Dam is gonna start coming out this year. So the fish at Souls that are getting counted at George and Martha's are going up into Sylvia Place Pond, right? That's gonna change. So I think we really do want those counts there. I think it's gonna be important to sustain an interesting thing. And unbeknownst to almost everybody in the world, it seems, there's a line item, an earmark in the governor's budget for $2 million to take out the Russell Pond Dam. And none of us knew about it.
yeah, that was a shock.
And it's there because it's such a hazardous dam. So over time, over centuries, that had 3 breaches up there. And all it is, I mean, that Russell Pond, which you see when you're on Indian Pond Road going around, it's a huge pondy lake that everybody thinks is their pondy lake. It was an apple orchard with Winter Meadow Brook going through it before our industrial, needs exceeded our ability to produce power, and that was one of them. So that was water supply and it was power for a while. And over time it just became, an untended thing. So the owner just flew the coop, and Division of Dam Safety has been after him in court for 10 years, and they've given up trying to bring the guy to do what he's supposed to do.
So privately owned dam.
So because any sort of dam breach would affect Sylvia Place Road and Elm Street as well as 8 neighbors, they put money in it.
To include 2 people in this room, correct? I believe George and Martha are on that plan. So, yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because there's a lot going on.
Sorry.
It's exciting.
Fine, just a side question maybe for Brad on that. Are there smelt up at the furthest pond upstream, or how far are they currently?
We did a study when Elm Street came out. We did not find them above Elm Street. And they maybe a few getting up there. And there's lots of good habitat created when Elm Street Dam came out. But I think, we're working with Pine and others to maybe modify that riffle a little bit to give them a boost.
Actually, I've been working with the conscom to see if we can't put it into, we need to do the stormwater on Elm Street, that Matt, thank God, is working on.
Yep.
And, at the same time, it would be good if we could deal with that, because we'll have so much equipment on site.
Yes, just need an excavator to pull some rocks.
I think it's a pretty minor tweak, I think. The slope is a little bit steep for smelt. They're not strong swimmers. If you can soften the top of that slope, I think they'll go over. 2 years ago, we found eggs right on below the slope. So the eggs were all over where the Elm Street Dam was, but they weren't, the velocity was a little bit high. We measured the velocity, it was a little bit too high for them. If we can get smelt over there, I think they could really colonize a lot of habitat upstream.
Really nice cobbles up that way. It's really quite beautiful. But yeah, there's just that one little blockage.
It's just a little speed bump. So.
I'm so glad we're not in the river this year doing that.
That was cold.
Yeah, cold.
Yep.
Got to keep your hands underwater.
Yeah, Bill has a question.
Oh, no, I was just going to say something about the governor's budget, supplemental budget.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty important because the governor submitted a supplemental budget, but naturally the legislature struck everything out. So you have to but the figures were put out there. And most of the figures were actually put out there by the professionals who have been dealing with our issues, our phone calls and everything else, from MVP plans, from complaints about dam removal, dam safety, also they're fantastic. They're all projects that are necessary. So if you want these things to happen, get in touch with your local legislators and say, I would like that item restored to the budget. It's in Ways and Means right now, probably kicking around in there for about a month or so. So if they're projects...
Searan on Ways and Means?
Isn't Sue Moran on Ways and Means?
I think so. And I know Mike Rodericks is the chair right now, so you want to get a hold of him. But I mean, it's going to be really important to keep it alive, keep it with your legislator. And I know right now there are a couple of big ones in the Bridgewaters. They've already contacted their legislator, and he's like at the point of.
Yeah, that's actually the only thing that we have in there this year.
Yeah. So lobby for what you need, lobby for what you want.
And speaking of lobbying, the Watershed Action Alliance, which we're still members of, is having a legislative breakfast on this coming Wednesday or Thursday.
Oh gosh.
I think it's the 23rd.
I think it's Thursday.
The 23rd is Wednesday though. I'll send it around.
Yeah.
Put another thing.
That's like 3 meetings from now.
It's virtual, so it would be easy to.
Yeah.
And
we have a presentation in there
Yeah.
that tells about some of the stuff we've been doing.
Yeah. But to Bill's point, it is important to reach out to people. All right, great.
So, yeah, I'm going to pass this around. There are the other ones as well, and please, like I said, if you check out the Jones River Newsline. Most people, I presume, are subscribers in here. If you go to jonesriver.org, click the Newsline thing. There's a more detailed breakdown, and also just direct your friends to over there. So you don't live in Kingston.
So we're
but you can
gonna
still have them if you want.
Okay. We're going to take a break right now because rules are rules. And the only ones that can elect our board of directors are members. You can join now if you're not. So we're going to take a break and then we're going to reconvene in about 10 minutes. Okay? Everybody eat food.
Quorum are we?
I'm not going to say. Close.
All right, that gets everyone.
Those two. Oh, we got some more. All right, anybody else out there?
There are, but he asked if they were members and they didn't come.
Okay. I'm just going to head count.
Go for it.
All right. Now we get to do the fun part of the annual meeting. You've had great presentations, and I'm so happy that you all chose to attend today. And now we have to re-elect some members of the board who put themselves up for re-election, and re-elect a new member to fill a vacant seat. We have a slate. The nominating committee has worked, and we put together a slate of nominees. Does everybody have their agenda here? Okay. Here,
I'll get it, I'll get it.
All right, while we're looking, I would like to have those who are up for re-election to raise their hands so the people can recognize them. Anybody who's up for re-election, please raise your hand so the folks in the crowd can recognize you and know that you are interested in serving another term. All right, and if you just start with Peter, just state your name to the crowd. Most people know him.
So, Peter Baird, up for nomination for director at large.
Martha Mutry, up for re-election.
Karen?
Karen Wayman, up for re-election.
Who else? Anybody else?
David?
Melissa's in here.
Melissa could not be here today. She's out of town. She is up for re-election. And Nathan, if you'd like to say, people probably don't know Nathan, if you'd like to introduce yourself and say a little bit about your interests.
Sure, yep. I'm Nathan Hedberg. I've sort of been thrown into a lot of projects in the area in the last 2 years, and I've learned a lot of information from Pine and her associates. So it's an honor to be nominated, and I hope to be sort of more actively involved in all the things that are going on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? All right, hearing none. I'd like a motion to accept the slate as presented by the nominating committee. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All right.
Peter, did you move that?
I'll move that.
Moved, I didn't move it.
No, you can move it.
That is not unusual for me.
David jumped the gun because he was anticipating someone else.
Try to be brief and.
Okay, so David made the motion. Does someone want to second David's motion?
Second, what I say.
All right, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the slate being nominated?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Now we get to do our second piece of business here. Do I have a motion to vote on the slate to become members of the boards of directors for second terms or new membership? Have a motion?
I'll move it.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chris? Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the slate?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations.
Keep up the good work, everyone. Fresh prints out there.
Oh, wait. We'll do one more thing then. Do I have a motion to close the annual meeting? Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. All right.
All right.